Come celebrate Mom's birthday instead of sleeping. The man speaking so freely to me, hospitalized with a high fever, is my husband who always prioritizes his mother. I've decided. I'm done with this husband. He's out of here. But first, let's stir up a little trouble. I am a very bad wife. And a bad daughter-in-law too. My name is Emma. In my 20s, as a single noble office lady, I never scrimped. Back then, buying deli foods from the French restaurants and enjoying a drink on Friday nights was my greatest pleasure. Now, as a frugal 40-year-old, I prefer gulping down sparkling wine. After all, sparkling wine is better than wine. Sometimes I think it might be nice to indulge like the old days. But my cooking skills have improved. Now, it's more fun thinking up menus that surpass those restaurant foods. Cooking isn't fun when it feels like a chore. But it's enjoyable when you aim to make delicious things. I used to hate cooking when I reached my 30s. It felt like mere labor back then. About 10 years ago. 2 years into my marriage, I was grappling with a particular problem, the relationship between my husband, Kevin, and my mother-in-law. Our newlywed life had been nothing but fun for a while. It all started one holiday when my husband spoke to me. Mom, Em. What? My husband, who always calls me Emma, suddenly said Mom. I was shocked and a bit embarrassed, playfully replying. Calling me Mom is a bit premature, don't you think? Practicing for when we have kids? To my surprise, he became flustered. Sorry, I mistook you for my mom. Mistakenly calling me Mom. I couldn't believe my ears. It would have been better if he had said it was a rehearsal. My husband had never called his mother Mom in front of me before. Unsatisfied with the mistake, I asked what it meant, and he said, It's a leftover from childhood, I've always called her Mom. Although he corrected it as an adult, it sometimes slips out. Because he doesn't want me to think less of him for it. Among my female friends, many still call their mothers Mom. It didn't seem unusual. And I thought it was fine if there were no problems within the family. However, the fact that my husband still calls his mother Mom left me feeling indescribably disgusted. I couldn't understand why I could forgive my friends but not my husband, but it just felt incredibly wrong. He seemed to feel bad about the mix-up, but that wasn't the point. It was more about the fundamental discomfort I felt. After that, my husband, having let his secret slip, seemed to lose his inhibitions. He began referring to his mother as Mom, in the third person more frequently in front of me. And then, another problem arose. Ever since we married, gradually, my mother-in-law seemed to want to meet with my husband frequently. And she began inviting us to her house often. Very often. Originally, my husband had lived at home for a long time. It wasn't that he lived in the countryside, and his job was close to his parents' house. So he didn't need to live alone and could save money. If he hadn't married me, he might have ended up a mama's boy forever. But I had also lived at home for a long time, so it was mutual. However, now I began to wonder if there was another reason for his prolonged home life. Perhaps he loved his mother, or should I say, Mom, too much to leave. Observing my mother-in-law's behavior, it was hard not to think so. At least, it was clear she loved her son very much. I couldn't tell if she was overtly doting. But she certainly wanted to see his face regularly. I understand loving your own child. But he's already a man in his late 20s. It seemed about time for a little child independence, or so I thought, as an outsider. My mother-in-law's welcoming mode knew no bounds. I made Kevin's favorite fried chicken, so come have dinner with us tonight. I found Kevin's favorite snacks on sale, so I bought a lot. Should I bring them over to your place? She kept trying to connect with her son using every trick in the book, and I, getting dragged into it, honestly found it annoying. Mother-in-law, ever heard of personal space? As someone who works in caregiving, going to my in-laws' house at night, or having my mother-in-law visit our home was honestly a hassle. It might sound selfish, but after a draining day at work, I want to relax without having to be considerate of anyone else. Still, it felt cruel to snub my mother-in-law, who was waiting with homemade food. Regrettably, I had told my husband, "It's a bit troublesome to have her come over so often. Why don't you visit your mom by yourself?" I explained to my mother-in-law that I didn't have the physical energy because of my job, and she seemed to understand. Well, it seemed like she didn't care much, whether I came or not. Thus, my husband started visiting his parents' house regularly. I thought that settled it, but only briefly. One day, I came home from work to find my mother-in-law in our house. She had been cooking, waiting for us. Apparently, my husband had given her a spare key and told her, "Think of this as your own home." Wait a minute. I hadn't heard a single thing about this. The table was laden with my husband's favorite dishes, fried chicken, hamburgers, and pasta. If you stuck a flag in that ketchup rice, it'd be a perfect kid's meal. Thank you for cooking, but I'm not a child. I had a bad feeling as I cautiously opened the refrigerator and found that 5 days' worth of ingredients had been used up. It's the food for this house, so I thought it was okay to use it as Kevin said. My mother-in-law explained. But I hadn't heard anything about this. Exhausted from work, I felt like my insides were boiling, but I held back. After all, my mother-in-law meant no harm. But that doesn't make it okay. And the worst part wasn't her, it was my husband, who casually okayed everything without consulting me. In the end, my mother-in-law stayed over that night and returned to her home the next morning. With work looming, I didn't have time to press my husband on why he gave the spare key to his mother. I wanted to discuss this issue as soon as possible, so I set up a time to talk with my husband that evening. Surprisingly, he agreed to the discussion quite easily. "I'm sorry. I'll ask Mom to refrain from using the spare key from now on." He promised me that. But that wasn't really the end of it. Eventually, my mother-in-law started coming to our house once or twice a week to cook and stay over. Unfortunately, my husband hadn't exactly broken his promise. The use of the spare key was to be limited, not forbidden. So that's how it is. Huh? According to my husband, I told her to limit it. But there's nothing I can do if she comes over on her own since she has the key. Are you kidding me? Giving out the spare key was the original mistake. And the person who gave it out is feigning ignorance, which is incredibly infuriating. Moreover, my mother-in-law has taken liberties like rearranging the kitchen and adding kitchenware, treating our house as if it were her own. Am I being too narrow-minded? No, that can't be it. Whose house is this again? It might already be mostly taken over. Proof of that is that my mother-in-law now casually criticizes me. "Oh, Emma, you're using bouillon cubes? Please don't feed Kevin that stuff. I raised him to eat as additive-free as possible." So, the result is a guy who loves kids' meals. I still can't say that. The husband himself chugs juices and supplements full of additives. He loves candy too. My stress had reached its limit. Maybe it would be better to divorce. I've been having sleepless nights. Naturally, my body is screaming. My stomach hurts, and I feel dizzy every day because I can't sleep. Mistakes at work are piling up. Then one day, it seemed my body had reached its limit. I developed a high fever close to 105 degrees. I barely had the energy to crawl. And I would lose consciousness almost immediately if I let my guard down. It's frustrating, but I have no choice but to rely on my husband. Sorry, my temperature has been fluctuating between 100 and 105 degrees. Could you buy me some cooling sheets and a sports drink? Panting, I desperately told my husband. But his response was far beyond what I had expected. What are you talking about? We had a dinner planned at my parents' house today. Huh? What is he talking about? I try to recall, and indeed, I remember that during her last visit. My mother-in-law had said, "Let's have a dinner party at our place next time." She was excited, planning to invite my sister-in-law and her family for a fun gathering. Do you even understand my condition right now? I respond, barely able to breathe. My husband then says, "Well, I'll just go by myself then. See you." And he leaves for work, completely ignoring my request for him to buy some essentials. Doesn't he care that his wife is suffering from a high fever? Is a dinner with his mom that important? Unbelievable. It was a mistake to rely on him. I crawl back into bed, wondering if I might not wake up this time. But I do wake up. The first things I see are the stark white ceiling and curtains. It seems I'm alive, but where am I? This isn't home. My husband peers into my face, smiling, "You're awake." Where am I? At the hospital. I was really shocked. When I came home, you were collapsed in the hallway. I collapsed? Yeah, you seemed to be in agony from a high fever. Maybe you went downstairs to get some water and collapsed near the kitchen. I don't even remember if I was trying to get water. The fever must have reached a life-threatening level. I instinctively feel relieved that I woke up safely. I'm showing symptoms of dehydration. And I have no strength in my body. My stomach has been upset recently. And I feel completely wrecked. It's decided that I need to stay hospitalized for a few days to be observed. 3 days into my hospital stay, the day before I'm supposed to be discharged. My husband calls me. I wonder what it's about. Are you still sleeping? It's Mom's birthday, get up and come celebrate. Huh? I'm stunned by my husband's angry voice over the phone. Telling me, who couldn't even bathe until yesterday due to a fever, to come celebrate Mom's birthday. Is he stupid? There's no way I can go. Besides, they just had a dinner party and now a birthday party? They could have combined them. I swallow all my complaints and respond with a logical argument. I've been hospitalized. There's no way I'm recovered. But my husband replies, "It's just the flu, get over it quickly." True, the diagnosis is influenza. But I believe my weakened immune system is due to recent stress. Whose fault does he think that is? He dismissively says it's just the flu. However, my husband doesn't consider my feelings and says, "You didn't come to the last meal, so you owe it to them." That's it. I'm done. I'm saying goodbye to a husband who prioritizes his mom over me. Did you say something? Nothing. It seems my husband missed my muttered words. Well, that's more convenient for me. I simply tell him, I'll make sure to visit your parents' house once I'm discharged. And hang up unilaterally. Perhaps upset by how I ended the call. My husband doesn't come to pick me up on the day of my discharge. Well, I don't care. Holding all my belongings from the hospital stay, I head to my in-laws' house. Oh, Emma, are you okay? My mother-in-law greets me with a surprised face. Thank you. I'm fully recovered now. I'm sorry for missing your birthday and the dinner party. That's fine, you must be tired. Come on in. While she is kind in demeanor, her expression clearly reads, it's not really pleasant having just the daughter-in-law over. She really doesn't mind that I missed the birthday and dinner parties. After making small talk with my in-laws for a bit, I soon left their house. My home is nearby, but I decided to stop by the local municipal office first. Back at home for the first time in a while, I quickly pack my things while my husband is away. I leave the divorce papers I just picked up on the table. Everything is ready. Then, my phone rings from my mother-in-law's number. I ignore it at first as it keeps ringing, and soon I see almost 20 missed calls. I finally answer, and to my surprise, it's my husband's voice over the phone. What's this about? Dear, why are you calling from your mother's phone? What do you mean, what's this about? What's this letter? Oh, you've read it then. A grin escapes me as my husband speaks. Then, apparently snatching the phone from him, my mother-in-law demands, is this true? Yes, it is. So, in the background, my husband shouts, Mom, it's not like that. But she seems not to hear him. That's because, when I left their house, I left a letter detailing the truth about my husband. At first, I was completely deceived. But actually, my husband isn't mom first. He's just pretending to be, while he's actually extremely annoyed by his mother. I overheard him talking on the phone with someone who seemed to be his junior. I'll treat you next time. What? Money? Oh, I can get as much as I need from my mom. No problem. Seriously, parents are like ATMs. At first, I thought I misheard. But it seems this is indeed how he feels. He finds his non-independent mother annoying, but lets her have her way to get an allowance. He gave out our house keys because he wanted more pocket money than usual. Apparently, he had been receiving about $1,000 a month from his mother, who is into stocks. However, with the truth now exposed to his mother, and having kept his true feelings hidden from his sister-in-law and father-in-law, he's been regretting and stressing over the increased interactions with his mother. Why would you? My mother-in-law is speechless. And that person, your son, he's quit his job, you know. What? My mother-in-law is dumbfounded, and my husband is desperate. What are you talking about? When she asks him if he's quit his job, he falls silent. I've been getting his resignation papers and pension book at home, so it's undeniable. You thought you were hiding it from me. But when we live in the same house, you can't hide anything. The call goes almost silent on the family's end. They probably put me on speaker, so everyone heard what I said. My husband mutters, well, there were circumstances. Yes, gambling at the casino during work hours, important circumstances, right? That's why you got fired, isn't it? You were telling your junior about it. Hey. My husband panics, and my in-laws are appalled. Kevin, you liked gambling? You were hiding that from me? In response to my question, my husband hesitated and said, "Well." When pressed by his father to give a clear answer, he began, "Actually, it seems my husband has been a fan of gambling since his college days. He had kept it a secret from both me and his family, sneaking off to casinos during work breaks, so no one knew about his gambling habit. His workplace was fairly lax, and there were others doing similar things. At first, his results at work were good enough that his behavior was overlooked. However, as he gained more responsibilities at work after we got married, it became harder for him to visit casinos, which only increased his desire to gamble. Eventually, he lost control, spending more and more time at the parlors during work hours, until it was noticed by his workplace. Despite repeated warnings, he continued his long visits to casinos during work hours and was finally fired. No company pays a salary for gambling. I'm just too tired of your duplicity and our life together. As I spoke my truth, my husband raised his voice. Even so, what's this divorce paper? Divorce is too extreme. Think it over. I'll think it over. I've thought it over just now, and I still want a divorce. You haven't thought it over at all. Are you seriously telling me to reconsider? Staying with an unemployed gambler who lies and didn't care even when I was dying? Instead of my husband, it was his mother who agreed with me. Yes, she's right. What, Mom? Aren't you on my side? I'm just an ATM to you, right? Automatic teller, Mom, that's what you think. After all the pain I went through to give birth to you. No, I mean, you're important to me, Mom. Then Emma's claims are false? Of course. Why did you panic then? When I read this letter, and immediately went to your house to ask you, Kevin, you looked pale. That is. Sigh. Your inability to answer says it all. It seems Emma was telling the truth. Wait, Mom. Give back all the money I've given you. Wait. Think it over, okay? I don't care anymore. Mom. I'm sorry. As I almost burst out laughing at the desperate exchange between my husband and his straightforward mother, I said, "So, I'm divorcing you, but just so you know, I'll be asking for a division of property without considering your financial situation." My husband was at a loss for words, and on the other end of the phone, his father was laughing, "It's your own fault," while his mother was likely speechless, thinking, there's no defending him now. Thus, my husband lost the trust of his mother, the support of his father, and me, his wife. All that remained was the debt he owed to his mother. After that, as you know, I'm not Mom first. I want to change my ways, let's try again. My husband repeatedly begged for reconciliation, but I naturally refused. The problem wasn't that he prioritized his mother, it was that he was full of lies. Such an untrustworthy man is not suitable as a partner. When I firmly told him this, he seemed deeply shocked and never asked for reconciliation again. The discussion about reconciliation had been muddy, and it was hard to get him to agree to the divorce, but it was successfully finalized. He has to repay the money to his mother and is now desperately working at his new job, which pays less than his previous one, and he is being scolded by younger supervisors. Well, it's a good experience for a pampered husband. His mother has also become distanced from her sister-in-law's family due to this incident. Disgusted, his father started spending less time at home, leading to a much lonelier life than before. Well, she still has her beloved son, hopefully. His affection returns to her. Meanwhile, I started managing a cat cafe with the money I saved from work. Honestly, there's hardly any profit. It's mostly break-even or a loss due to the expenses of caring for rescue cats. But it's fulfilling, and I feel like I'm gaining something more important than money. Knowing I'm helping the cats. Although I'm single, the cats are like family to me. That's what I thought. But recently I had a big argument with someone from an NPO doing cat rescue work about strategies to protect cats. Normally, I'd think, I'll never deal with this person again. However, we both deeply care about animals and oddly hit it off. We're not dating, but we've started going out for meals together, and I can feel his kindness. For my birthday, he gave me a cat mug that matches his. I don't know what the future holds. Maybe, just maybe, something could happen. Just kidding.
The shattering of glass echoed through the kitchen, followed by Harry's exasperated sigh. I closed my eyes, counting to 10 before turning to face the mess. It was the third plate this week. "Maggie, where's the dustpan?" Harry called out, not bothering to look for it himself. "Right where it always is, dear." "Under the sink," I replied, my voice strained with forced patience. As I watched him fumble with the broom, I couldn't help but wonder when my husband had become so helpless. "You know, if you'd just let me organize the cabinets my way, this wouldn't happen," he grumbled, sweeping the shards into a pile. I bit my tongue, resisting the urge to remind him that his way involved shoving everything into random drawers. Instead, I focused on finishing the dishes, scrubbing perhaps a bit harder than necessary. "Oh, by the way," Harry said, dumping the broken plate into the trash, "Mom called earlier. She wants us over for dinner tomorrow night." My hands froze mid-scrub. "Tomorrow? But we have plans, remember? The Johnsons invited us for their barbecue." Harry shrugged, already heading for the living room. "We can do that another time. You know how Mom gets when we cancel." I did know. All too well. Ella, my mother-in-law, had a knack for guilt-tripping that would make a Catholic nun envious. But this was the third time this month we'd changed our plans to accommodate her whims. "Harry," I called out, following him, "don't you think it's time we set some boundaries with your mother?" He looked at me as if I'd suggested we move to Mars. "Boundaries? With Mom? Come on, Maggie. Don't be ridiculous. She's just lonely since Dad passed. It's been 5 years, Harry, and she has a busier social life than we do." Harry's face clouded over. "Look, I don't want to argue about this. We're going to Mom's tomorrow, end of discussion." I felt something snap inside me. End of discussion? When did you become the dictator of this household? When did you become so selfish? He shot back. "She's my mother, Maggie. She needs us." "And what about what I need?" I didn't realize I was shouting until I saw Harry flinch. "What about our marriage? When was the last time we did something just the two of us?" Harry's phone buzzed, and he glanced at it, his expression softening. "I've got to take this. It's work." As he walked away, already engrossed in his call, I sank onto the couch, feeling deflated. This wasn't the man I'd married 15 years ago. That Harry had been ambitious, attentive, and most importantly, my partner. This Harry, I wasn't sure who he was anymore. My own phone chimed with a text. It was from Lily, my sister-in-law. "SOS. Need to talk. Can you meet me at Joe's Diner in 20? I hesitated, glancing towards the study where I could hear Harry's muffled voice. Making a split-second decision, I grabbed my keys. "I'm going out," I called to Harry. No response, of course. The drive to Joe's was a blur of streetlights and conflicting emotions. As I pulled into the parking lot, I spotted Lily already at our usual booth, her face pale and drawn. "Lily, what's wrong?" I slid in across from her, noting the untouched cup of coffee in front of her. She looked up, her eyes red-rimmed. "It's Sam. And Ella. I overheard them talking. Maggie, I think they're plotting something against me." My blood ran cold. "What do you mean?" Lily opened her mouth to respond, but before she could, the diner's door chimed. We both looked up to see Harry walk in, his face a mask of fury as he spotted us. "Maggie? What the hell is going on here?" As Harry stormed towards our table, I realized that the quiet discontent in my marriage was about to erupt into something I wasn't sure I was prepared to face. Harry's thunderous expression sent a chill down my spine as he approached our booth. Lily shrank back, her eyes darting between us. "What's going on here?" Harry demanded, his voice low and dangerous. I straightened my spine, meeting his gaze. "I'm having coffee with my sister-in-law. Is that a crime now?" "Don't play games, Maggie. You snuck out without telling me." "I told you I was leaving. It's not my fault you were too busy with your work call to notice." Harry's jaw clenched. "We'll discuss this at home. Come on, let's go." I glanced at Lily, who looked on the verge of tears. "No, Harry. Lily needs me right now." "Oh, for God's sake," he muttered. "What's wrong now, Lily? Another imaginary slight from Mom." Lily flinched as if she'd been slapped. I felt my anger rising. "That's enough. Harry, go home. I'll be there when I'm done here." For a moment I thought he might argue further, but then his phone buzzed again, and he glanced at it, his expression changing. "Fine. Don't be late. We have dinner at Mom's tomorrow, remember?" As Harry stormed out, I turned back to Lily. "I'm so sorry about that. Now, what were you saying about Ella and Sam?" Lily's hands trembled as she clutched her coffee cup. "I overheard them talking in the study last night. They were discussing ways to deal with me. Ella said I was becoming a problem, that I was turning Sam against her." I felt a surge of protective anger. "What did Sam say?" "He agreed with her," Lily's voice broke. "He said maybe it was time to consider other options, whatever that means." My mind raced. "Have you confronted Sam about this?" Lily shook her head. "I'm scared, Maggie. You know what Ella's capable of. Remember what happened to Janet?" I winced at the memory. Janet had been Sam's previous girlfriend before Lily. She'd stood up to Ella once too often, and suddenly found herself the subject of vicious rumors that ruined her reputation in town. She'd moved away soon after. "We need to do something," I said, reaching across the table to squeeze Lily's hand. "This can't go on." Just then, the diner's door chimed again. We both looked up to see Ella herself sweep in, her perfectly coiffed hair and designer outfit a stark contrast to our disheveled appearances. "Well, well," Ella said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "What a cozy little meeting. Planning another way to disappoint my boys, are we?" I felt Lily stiffen beside me. "Hello, Ella," I said, keeping my voice neutral. "What brings you here?" Ella's eyes narrowed. "I was on my way home from Bridge Club when I saw your car, Maggie. Imagine my surprise when I realized you were here instead of at home with my Harry. You know how he hates to eat alone." "Harry's a grown man, Ella. I'm sure he can manage dinner on his own for one night." Ella's smile turned predatory. "Oh, I'm not worried about Harry. I'm more concerned about you, dear. It's not good for a wife to neglect her duties so frequently." I felt a retort building in my throat, but Lily spoke up first. "We were just leaving, Ella. No need to worry about us." Ella's gaze swiveled to Lily, and I saw a flash of something cold in her eyes. "Of course, dear. I'm sure Sam is wondering where you've run off to as well. You know how he worries." As Ella sauntered away to order her coffee, Lily and I exchanged glances. The weight of unspoken fears hung between us. "We can't let her win," I whispered fiercely. "Whatever she's planning, we need to be ready." Lily nodded, a spark of determination finally lighting her eyes. "You're right. It's time we stopped being victims and started fighting back." As we left the diner, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were stepping onto a battlefield. But for the first time in years, I felt ready for the fight. The next morning I woke to an empty bed and the sound of hushed voices from downstairs. Creeping down the stairs, I recognized Harry's low murmur and Ella's sharp tones. My stomach clenched as I strained to hear their conversation. "She's becoming a problem, Harry," Ella hissed. "You need to get her under control." "Mom, please. Maggie's just going through a phase. She'll come around." I bit back a bitter laugh. "A phase? Is that what he thought this was?" "She's poisoning Lily against us," Ella continued. "If we're not careful, they'll ruin everything we've worked for." My blood ran cold. What were they talking about? What had they worked for? Before I could hear Harry's response, the front door opened, and Sam's voice joined the mix. I retreated upstairs, my mind racing. Later that afternoon, I met Lily at the park, away from prying eyes and ears. Her face was pale, her eyes red-rimmed. "Maggie, I can't take it anymore," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Last night, Sam, I felt a surge of protective anger. "Did he hurt you?" Lily shook her head. Not physically, but he told me I was imagining things, that I was being paranoid. He said if I didn't stop causing trouble, he'd have to take action. That sounds like a threat, I said, my jaw clenching. It gets worse, Lily continued. I found these in his desk drawer. She handed me a stack of papers. As I flipped through them, my heart sank. Bank statements, property deeds, all in Sam's name alone. He's been hiding assets, I muttered. Lily nodded, tears welling in her eyes. I think he's planning to leave me, Maggie, and if he does, I'll have nothing. I wrapped an arm around her shoulders. We won't let that happen. We'll fight back together. Just then, my phone buzzed with a text from Harry. Where are you? Mom's waiting for us. I'd completely forgotten about the dinner at Ella's. I have to go, I told Lily, but this isn't over. We'll figure something out. When I arrived at Ella's house, the tension was palpable. Harry shot me a disapproving look as I slipped into my seat at the dining table. Nice of you to join us, dear, Ella said, her smile not reaching her eyes. We were just discussing the future of the family business. I blinked in surprise. I didn't know there was a family business. Sam chuckled. Oh, Maggie, always the last to know, aren't you? I felt a flash of anger. Maybe if someone bothered to tell me things, I wouldn't be. Now, Ella interjected smoothly. Let's not bicker. We have important matters to discuss. Harry, Sam, why don't you tell Maggie about our plans? As Harry and Sam launched into an explanation about some property development scheme, my mind whirled. This was what they'd been working on? And they'd kept me in the dark all this time? Of course, Ella continued, we'll need everyone's cooperation, including Lily's. I stiffened. What do you mean? Ella's smile turned predatory. Well, we'll need to use some of the properties in her name. For tax purposes, you understand. Suddenly, everything clicked into place. The hidden assets, the whispered conversations, the threats against Lily. They were planning to use her, then discard her. No, I said, my voice ringing out in the sudden silence. Absolutely not. Harry's face darkened. Maggie, you don't understand. Oh, I understand perfectly, I snapped. You're all planning to rob Lily blind. Well, it's not going to happen, not while I'm around. As I stood to leave, Ella's voice cut through the air like a whip. Sit down, Maggie. You have no idea what you're dealing with. I met her gaze, feeling a surge of defiance. No, Ella, you have no idea what you're dealing with. This ends now. As I stormed out of the house, I could feel the weight of their stares on my back. I knew I'd just declared war, but for the first time in years, I felt truly alive. The battle was just beginning, and I was ready to fight. The days following my confrontation at Ella's house were a blur of tense silences and heated arguments. Harry barely spoke to me, spending most of his time on hushed phone calls or locked away in his study. I knew I was walking a dangerous line, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something bigger was at stake. One evening, as I was sorting through old papers in our bedroom, I stumbled upon a folder I'd never seen before. My hands trembled as I opened it, revealing a stack of legal documents. As I scanned the pages, my blood ran cold. Harry! I shouted, storming downstairs with the folder clutched to my chest. What the hell is this? He looked up from his laptop, his face paling as he saw what I was holding. Maggie, I can explain. Explain? I threw the papers onto the coffee table. Explain how you've been secretly transferring our assets into accounts I can't access. Explain how you've been funneling money into this so-called family business without my knowledge or consent. Harry stood, his hands raised in a placating gesture. It's not what you think. We're just protecting our interests. Our interests? I laughed bitterly. Or your mother's. Just then, my phone buzzed with a text from Lily. Help. Sam's gone crazy. He's threatening to take everything. My heart raced. I have to go, I told Harry, already grabbing my keys. Where are you going? He demanded, following me to the door. I whirled to face him. To help your brother's wife, since apparently none of you care about her well-being. I arrived at Lily's house to find her sitting on the front steps, her face buried in her hands. When she looked up, I saw a bruise forming on her cheek. Oh, Lily, I breathed, pulling her into a hug. What happened? Through her tears, she told me how Sam had come home in a rage, accusing her of conspiring against the family. When she'd confronted him about the hidden assets, he'd lost control. He said if I didn't sign over everything to him, he'd make sure I ended up with nothing, she sobbed. Maggie, I'm scared. I don't know what to do. I held her tightly, my mind racing. We need to get you out of here. Pack a bag. You're coming with me. As Lily gathered her things, I made a series of phone calls. First to a lawyer friend who owed me a favor, then to a women's shelter I'd volunteered at years ago. Finally, to my sister across state lines. By the time Sam's car pulled into the driveway, we were ready to leave. He stumbled out, his face contorted with anger when he saw us. "Where do you think you're going?" he slurred, blocking our path to my car. I stepped in front of Lily, my voice steady despite my pounding heart. "Move, Sam. You don't want to do anything you'll regret." He lunged forward, but I was ready. The self-defense classes I'd taken after college finally paid off as I sidestepped his clumsy attack, using his momentum to send him sprawling. "Let's go," I told Lily, ushering her into the car. As we drove away, I could see Sam shouting and gesticulating in the rearview mirror. My phone buzzed incessantly. Harry, no doubt, having been alerted by his brother. "What now?" Lily asked, her voice small and scared. I took a deep breath, my hands tightening on the steering wheel. "Now we fight back. No more playing nice, no more being the obedient wives they expect us to be. It's time to show Ella and her boys exactly what we're capable of." As we crossed the city limits, I felt a strange mix of fear and exhilaration. I knew that by driving away, I was leaving behind the life I'd known for the past 15 years. But looking at Lily's determined face beside me, I also knew I was driving towards something far more important: freedom, justice, and the chance to reclaim our lives. The road ahead was uncertain, but one thing was clear: the war had begun, and we were ready for battle. The safe house my sister had arranged for us was small but secure. As days turned into weeks, Lily and I settled into a routine, strategizing our next moves and supporting each other through the emotional turmoil. We'd both filed for divorce, and the legal battle was just beginning. One afternoon, as we pored over financial documents, my phone rang. It was Harry. "Maggie, please," he pleaded, his voice cracking. "Come home, we can work this out." I felt a pang in my chest, but steeled myself. "There's nothing to work out, Harry. You made your choice." "Mom's sick," he blurted out. She needs us, all of us." I froze, my mind racing. Was this another manipulation, or was Ella truly ill? Before I could respond, I heard Ella's voice in the background. "Tell her I need one of my daughters-in-law to move in and take care of me. It's the least they can do after tearing this family apart." My blood boiled. Even now, Ella was trying to control us. "Put her on the phone," I demanded. "Maggie, dear," Ella's saccharine voice oozed through the speaker. "I hope you've come to your senses. This little rebellion of yours has gone on long enough." "Rebellion?" I scoffed. "Is that what you call standing up for ourselves?" "Don't be dramatic," Ella chided. "Now I expect either you or Lily to be here by tomorrow. I need round-the-clock care, and who better than family?" I glanced at Lily, who was shaking her head vehemently. "That's not going to happen, Ella," I said firmly. "Oh." Her tone turned icy. "Well, perhaps you should consider the consequences of your refusal. I'd hate for certain information to come to light." My heart raced. "What are you talking about?" "Let's just say I know things about both you and Lily that you'd rather keep private. Your choice, dear." The line went dead, leaving me stunned. "What is it?" Lily asked, her face pale. "What did she say?" I relayed the conversation, watching Lily's expression shift from fear to anger. "She's bluffing," Lily insisted. "She can't know anything that bad." But doubt gnawed at me. What if Ella did have something on us? Could we risk calling her bluff? Just then, my phone buzzed with a text. It was from an unknown number containing a video file. With trembling fingers, I pressed play. The grainy footage showed me, years ago, in a heated argument with my former boss. I watched horror as my past self shoved him, causing him to stumble back against his desk. "Oh, God," I whispered. I'd forgotten about that. Lily peered at the screen. "What is it?" "It was right before I quit my last job," I explained. He'd been harassing me for months. That day, he tried to... I just snapped. I never reported it because I was afraid no one would believe me. Another text came through. "Imagine if this got out. Assault charges could complicate your divorce, couldn't they?" Lily's phone chimed next. She gasped as she read the message. "They know about the money I've been sending my sister," she said, her voice shaking. "The money from the joint account with Sam. They're threatening to accuse me of embezzlement." We sat in stunned silence, the weight of Ella's threats hanging over us. What do we do now? Lily asked, her voice small. I closed my eyes, feeling the walls closing in. We'd come so far, fought so hard. Could we really let Ella win now? But as I looked at Lily, saw the fear and determination in her eyes, I knew we couldn't back down. We'd weathered too much to give up now. We fight, I said, my voice stronger than I felt. We call her bluff, and we fight back harder than ever. No more running, no more hiding. It's time to take the battle to them. Lily nodded, a spark of hope igniting in her eyes. Together? I reached out and squeezed her hand. Together. They have no idea what we're capable of. As we began to formulate our plan, I felt a surge of resolve. Ella thought she had the upper hand, but she'd underestimated us for the last time. The real war was just beginning, and we were ready to win. The morning after Ella's threats, I woke to find Lily pacing our small living room, her face ashen. "Maggie," she whispered, her voice trembling, "I need to tell you something I've been hiding." My heart raced as I sat up, bracing myself for whatever bombshell she was about to drop. "What is it, Lily?" She collapsed onto the couch, tears streaming down her face. "Sam's been having an affair," she choked out, "for years. And Ella's been covering for him." I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. "How long have you known?" "I suspected for a while, but I found proof last month," Lily confessed. "Emails, hotel receipts. And then I overheard Ella talking to Sam about keeping it quiet. She said it was for the good of the family." Rage boiled inside me. "That manipulative witch," I seethed. "And Sam? How could he do this to you?" Lily's sobs intensified. "There's more," she whispered. "The woman he's been seeing, she's pregnant." The room spun around me as the full weight of Lily's revelation sank in. This wasn't just about infidelity anymore. This was about a child, an innocent life caught in the crossfire of our family's dysfunction. "We need to confront them," I said, my voice hard with determination. "All of them. No more hiding, no more secrets." Lily nodded, wiping her eyes. "But how? They'll just deny everything." A plan began to form in my mind. We gather evidence, everything we can find, and then we hit them where it hurts, their precious family business. We spent the next few days in a frenzy of activity. I called in favors from old colleagues, dug through financial records, and pieced together a damning picture of fraud and deceit that went far beyond Sam's affair. As we prepared to confront our husbands and Ella, my phone buzzed with a text from Harry. "We need to talk. Meet me at the park in an hour." Against my better judgment, I agreed. When I arrived, Harry was pacing nervously by the fountain. "Maggie," he said, his voice strained, "I know things have been bad between us, but I need you to come home. Mom's condition is getting worse, and the business... We're in trouble. Big trouble." I steeled myself against the flicker of sympathy I felt. "What kind of trouble, Harry?" He ran a hand through his hair. "Financial irregularities. The auditors are asking questions. If we don't sort this out, we could lose everything." For a moment, I was tempted to tell him everything I knew, to offer help. But then I remembered Lily's tears, Ella's threats, the years of manipulation. "I'm sorry, Harry," I said, my voice steady, "but I can't help you, not anymore." His face darkened. "You don't understand. If this gets out, it won't just be us who suffer. Think about the employees, their families." "Don't you dare try to guilt me," I snapped. "You made your choices. Now you have to live with the consequences." As I turned to leave, Harry grabbed my arm. "Maggie, please. I love you." I wrenched my arm free, tears stinging my eyes. "If you loved me, you wouldn't have let your mother control our lives. You wouldn't have lied to me for years." "What are you talking about?" Harry's face paled. "I know everything, Harry. About the business, about Sam's affair. And I know you've been hiding things from me, too." Harry's expression shifted from confusion to fear. "Maggie, whatever you think you know." "Save it," I cut him off. "Lily and I are done being your family's doormats. We're taking control of our lives, and if that means bringing down this house of cards you've built, so be it." As I walked away, leaving Harry stunned and silent, my phone buzzed again. It was Lily. "Maggie," she gasped, her voice thick with tears. "I just got a call from the hospital. It's Ella. She's had a heart attack." I froze, the weight of everything crashing down on me. In that moment, I realized we'd reached the point of no return. Whatever happened next would change our lives forever. "I'm on my way," I told Lily, my voice steadier than I felt. "It's time to end this, once and for all." The hospital corridor seemed endless as Lily and I rushed towards Ella's room. My mind raced with conflicting emotions. Concern for a woman I'd once considered family, anger at her manipulations, and fear of what awaited us. As we rounded the corner, we saw Harry and Sam huddled outside Ella's room, their faces drawn with worry. They looked up as we approached, surprise and relief flickering across their features. "Maggie, Lily," Harry said, his voice hoarse. "You came." Before I could respond, a nurse emerged from Ella's room. "She's asking for you all," she said softly. We filed into the room, the tension palpable. Ella lay in the hospital bed, looking smaller and more fragile than I'd ever seen her. But as her eyes met mine, I saw a flash of the old steel. "Well," she rasped, "I suppose it took me nearly dying to bring this family back together." I felt Lily stiffen beside me. "We're here out of concern, Ella," I said carefully. "But don't think for a moment that this changes anything." Ella's lips curved into a weak smile. "Always the fighter, aren't you, Maggie? But there are things you don't know. Things that—" Suddenly, Lily stepped forward, her face flushed. "No more secrets," she said, her voice trembling. "No more lies. I know about Sam's affair, Ella. I know you've been covering for him." The room fell silent. Sam's face drained of color while Harry looked between us in confusion. "What are you talking about?" Harry demanded. I took a deep breath, steeling myself. "It's not just Sam, Harry. We know about the financial irregularities in the business. We know about the fraud." Harry's eyes widened in shock. "How did you?" "That's enough." Ella's voice cracked like a whip, startling us all. She struggled to sit up, her eyes blazing. "You ungrateful girls have no idea what I've sacrificed for this family." "Sacrificed?" I scoffed. "You've manipulated and lied to us for years." As the accusations flew, the room descended into chaos. Sam and Harry tried to defend themselves, while Ella alternated between pleas for understanding and threats. In the midst of the turmoil, Lily's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, then gasped. "Maggie," she whispered, showing me the screen. It was an email from our lawyer. Attached were documents proving not only Sam's infidelity, but also Harry's. My world tilted on its axis as I scanned the evidence. Hotel receipts, intimate messages, even photos. I felt as if I'd been plunged into icy water. All this time, while I'd been fighting to save my marriage, Harry had been betraying me too. "How could you?" I whispered, my voice breaking as I turned to Harry. His face crumpled. "Maggie, I can explain, but I was beyond explanations. Years of pent-up anger, hurt, and betrayal surged through me." "No," I said, my voice gaining strength. "No more explanations. No more chances. Lily and I are done." Ella struggled to sit up, her face contorted with rage. "You can't just walk away. Think of the scandal, the shame." "The only shame here is what you've done to this family," Lily said, her voice steady despite the tears in her eyes. I turned to Lily, seeing my own pain and determination reflected in her face. "We're leaving," I said, "for good this time." As we walked towards the door, Sam called out, "You'll never survive without us. You have nothing." I paused, my hand on the doorknob. "We have each other," I said, not bothering to look back, "and that's more than enough." With that, Lily and I stepped out of the room, leaving behind the shattered remains of our old lives. As the door closed on the sounds of Ella's angry shouts and our husband's pleas, I felt a strange mix of grief and liberation. "What now?" Lily asked, her voice small but determined. I squeezed her hand, drawing strength from our shared resolve. "Now, we start over, on our own terms." As we walked out of the hospital into the bright sunlight, I knew the hardest part of our journey was still ahead, but for the first time in years, I felt truly free. Whatever challenges awaited us, Lily and I would face them together, stronger than ever. 2 weeks after our hospital confrontation, Lily and I stood outside Ella's sprawling mansion, our hearts pounding. We'd received a summons, a final attempt, no doubt, to manipulate us back into the fold. But this time we were ready. "Are you sure about this?" Lily whispered, her hand trembling in mine. I squeezed her fingers reassuringly. "Absolutely. It's time to end this once and for all." As we entered, the tension in the air was palpable. Harry, Sam, and Ella sat in the living room, their faces a mix of anger, fear, and desperation. Ella, looking frail but determined, spoke first. "Girls, I'm glad you've come to your senses. Now let's discuss how we can move past this unpleasantness." I felt a surge of anger at her dismissive tone. "There's nothing to discuss, Ella. We're here to tell you that we're filing for divorce." The room erupted into chaos. Sam leapt to his feet, his face red with rage. You can't do this. Think of the scandal, the shame. Harry, pale and shaken, pleaded. Maggie, please. We can work this out. I'll do anything. But it was Ella's reaction that surprised me most. She laughed, a bitter, hollow sound that sent chills down my spine. You foolish girls, she spat. You think you can just walk away? I built this family, this empire. I won't let you destroy it. Lily stepped forward, her voice steady despite her trembling hands. You're the one who destroyed it, Ella. With your lies, your manipulations. We're just finally breaking free. As accusations flew and tempers flared, I felt a strange calm settle over me. I realized that this moment, this confrontation, was what we'd been building towards for years. Enough, I said, my voice cutting through the chaos. We're not here to argue. We're here to tell you that it's over. We have evidence of your infidelities, your financial fraud. If you try to fight us on this, we'll take it all public. The color drained from their faces as the full impact of our words sank in. Harry slumped in his chair, defeated. Sam paced like a caged animal. But Ella's eyes blazed with a fury I'd never seen before. You ungrateful little... she began, rising from her chair. But before she could finish, Lily interrupted, her voice stronger than I'd ever heard it. No, Ella, we're not ungrateful. We're survivors. And we're done letting you control our lives. In that moment, looking at Lily's determined face, I felt a surge of pride and love for my sister-in-law. We'd been through hell together, and we'd come out stronger. This is your last chance, I said, addressing all three of them. Accept the divorce terms we've proposed, or we'll see you in court. And trust me, you don't want that. The silence that followed was deafening. Finally, Harry spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. What do you want from us? I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what came next. We want our freedom, a fair division of assets, and your word that you'll never try to contact us again. Sam opened his mouth to argue, but Ella held up a hand, silencing him. For a moment, I saw a flicker of the formidable woman she once was, the woman who had held this family in her iron grip for so long. You've won, she said, her voice laced with bitterness. Take what you want and go. As Lily and I turned to leave, I felt a weight lifting from my shoulders. Years of resentment, fear, and anger began to melt away, replaced by a sense of possibility. Outside, the sun was setting, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and pink. Lily turned to me, tears glistening in her eyes. We did it, she whispered. We're free. I pulled her into a tight hug, feeling my own eyes well up. Yes, we are, and we did it together. As we walked away from the house that had been our prison for so long, I felt a sense of excitement I hadn't experienced in years. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time it was ours to choose. So, Lily said, a small smile playing on her lips. What now? I laughed, feeling lighter than I had in years. Now we live, Lily. On our own terms, by our own rules, the world is waiting for us. Hand in hand, we walked towards our new future, leaving behind the shadows of our past. We had faced our demons, confronted our fears, and emerged victorious. Whatever challenges lay ahead, I knew we could face them. Together, as sisters, as survivors, as women who had reclaimed their power and their lives. The end was just the beginning, and I couldn't wait to see what came next. Evelyn, where are you? Why is our house just gone? Ethan's voice, laced with panic, was music to my ears. I savored the moment, the sweet retribution for his betrayal. Yes, Ethan, I had it demolished. Everything you left behind is gone. But why? His disbelief was palpable. Because, Ethan, some things are too broken to be fixed, I replied, a cold calmness in my voice. I am Evelyn, a 45-year-old caregiver, married to Ethan, a 46-year-old marketing executive. Our son, Lucas, had just moved out after college, leaving an echo in our home and apparently in Ethan's sense of responsibility. The day Lucas left, Ethan chuckled. Evelyn, he's not a kid anymore. Let him make his own mistakes. I remember feeling a twinge of annoyance, masked by the relief of seeing them both smile. But that annoyance, that small crack, was about to widen into a chasm. Just as I thought we'd rediscover each other, life took a sharp turn. Dad fell in the yard. Broken bone, maybe. I'm heading to the hospital, Ethan informed me one evening, his voice oddly detached. Should I come with you? No, I got this. Don't worry. But worry I did. At work, I was distracted, feeling an impending sense of doom. Returning home, I found Ethan lounging on the couch, as if his father's fracture was just another minor inconvenience. "He'll need a cane," Ethan said casually as if discussing the weather. This wasn't just about a cane. This was about Henry, Ethan's father, who had been living alone since his wife passed away 3 years ago. Despite our offers, he had refused to move in with us, valuing his independence. Now the decision was made for him. "We should live with your dad, right?" I asked Ethan, already knowing his answer. "Sure, why not?" He's family. The family home, where Ethan grew up, was more suitable for Henry in his condition. It was settled. We would move in with Henry. Little did I know, this decision was the first step towards an irreversible change, a change that would shatter the very foundations of our life together. That evening, as I looked around our soon-to-be-left condo, memories of Lucas's childhood flooded my mind. There was a bittersweet tang in the air, a mix of nostalgia and foreboding. Ethan's indifference was like a growing shadow in our home, but I was too preoccupied with the logistics of the move to confront it. In my heart, I hoped this move would bring us closer, not just to Henry, but to each other. How wrong I was. The move happened faster than expected. Henry, frail but smiling, welcomed us. "Sorry to be a burden," he said, his eyes reflecting a lifetime of memories held within the walls of his home. "You're not a burden, Dad. You're family," I assured him, while Ethan just nodded, his mind seemingly elsewhere. That night, as I lay in bed, listening to the unfamiliar sounds of the old house, I couldn't shake off a feeling of unease. Ethan, on the other hand, seemed more distant than ever, lost in thoughts I could not reach. It was the beginning of the end, the start of a journey that would lead me to the ultimate act of defiance. Little did Ethan know, his world, our world, was about to come crashing down. The walls of Henry's house, steeped in history, were now silent witnesses to a growing rift. As days turned to weeks, Ethan's late returns from work became the norm. His once warm smiles were replaced by a cold, distant demeanor. "Evelyn, he's my father. I know how to handle him," Ethan snapped one evening when I expressed my concern about his lack of involvement with Henry. I bit my tongue, the bitterness of his words stinging me. It wasn't just about Henry, it was about us, about what we were becoming, or rather what we were losing. Julia, Ethan's sister, visited one weekend. Her concern was palpable as she watched us moving around each other like distant planets in a decaying orbit. "Are you sure about this, Evelyn?" "Living with Dad, I mean. I can take him if it's too much," Julia offered, her eyes searching mine for a hint of reluctance. I forced a smile. "No, Julia, it's fine. We're fine." But we weren't. Ethan's aloofness was growing into a chasm that I could no longer bridge. His excuses for staying out late became more frequent, his explanations more flimsy. "Evelyn, I'm just grabbing a drink with colleagues. Networking, you know," he would say, his words lacking the conviction they once held. Networking or escaping? I found solace in Henry's company. Our conversations, filled with stories of the past, were a balm to my growing loneliness. In those moments I felt a connection, a belonging that had started to fade with Ethan. One evening, as I helped Henry with his exercises, his voice trembled. "Evelyn, you've been like a daughter to me. I hate to be the cause of any trouble between you and Ethan." I held his hand, assuring him, "Henry, you are not the problem. Please don't think that." But deep down, I knew the problem wasn't Henry. It wasn't even Ethan's late nights. The problem was something far more sinister, a rot that had set in the core of our marriage. Ethan's indifference was now a gaping hole, swallowing any remnants of the love we once shared. His absence, both physical and emotional, left me grappling with a myriad of unanswered questions. Was this our new normal? A life of silent meals, unshared beds, and unspoken words? I lay awake that night, listening to the creaks of the old house, each groan echoing the turmoil in my heart. I missed Ethan, or rather, the Ethan I thought I knew. The man who now lay beside me, lost in his own world, was a stranger. As the days blurred into each other, Ethan's neglect of both Henry and me became more pronounced. His once excited talks about his day at work dwindled to monosyllables. His late-night returns were now expected, and his excuses a mere formality. The gap between us widened, filled with unspoken accusations and stifled emotions. I was living with a ghost, a shadow of the man I married. It was during one of these sleepless nights that I stumbled upon the first thread of the web of deceit Ethan had been weaving. A thread that would unravel everything we had built together. As I lay there, staring into the darkness, I made a decision. I would no longer be a spectator in this crumbling facade of a marriage. I was going to find out the truth, no matter how painful it might be. And if my suspicions were correct, Ethan would soon learn that some actions have irreversible consequences. The stage was set. The actors were in place. The drama of our lives was about to reach its crescendo. The days turned into a monotonous cycle, with Ethan's apathy casting a shadow over the household. His late returns became so routine that I stopped asking where he had been. The silence between us grew louder, filled with unasked questions and unvoiced suspicions. One Saturday, I decided to confront him. "Ethan, your father feels neglected." "You're hardly here," I said, my voice a mix of frustration and desperation. Ethan scoffed. "He's fine, Evelyn. Stop being so dramatic. I have my life too, you know." His words stung, and I recoiled at his dismissiveness. Was this really the man I had loved for all these years? As I tended to Henry, his gratitude only deepened my resentment towards Ethan. "You're too good to us, Evelyn. I'm sorry for my son's behavior," Henry whispered during one of our walks. "It's not your fault, Henry. I just wish Ethan could see what he's missing," I replied, my heart heavy with unshed tears. Julia's visits became my solace, her presence a stark contrast to Ethan's indifference. "Evelyn, if you ever need to talk, I'm here," she offered one afternoon as we sipped tea in the garden. I nodded, grateful for her support, but too proud to admit how much Ethan's neglect was affecting me. The final straw came on a rainy Thursday evening. Ethan had not returned home, and his phone went straight to voicemail. Worried, I waited up, the clock ticking away my patience. He stumbled in past midnight, reeking of alcohol. "Where were you?" I demanded, my worry turning into anger. "Just out, Evelyn." "Stop being such a nag," he slurred, brushing past me. That word, nag, echoed in my mind, igniting a fire within me. I was not a nag. I was a wife concerned about her crumbling marriage. The following week, my suspicions turned into reality. While cleaning, I found a receipt in Ethan's jacket, a hotel receipt dated for a night he had claimed to be working late. My hands trembled as I read the details. Room service, a bottle of champagne, and a single room for two. The betrayal sliced through me, each word on the receipt a confirmation of Ethan's infidelity. My heart raced, a mixture of anger, pain, and disbelief coursing through me. I confronted him that evening, the receipt clenched in my fist. "What is this, Ethan? Explain this to me," I yelled, my composure shattered. Ethan's eyes widened, then narrowed. "It's not what you think, Evelyn. It was just a business meeting that went late." "A business meeting? With champagne in a hotel room?" I spat, my voice dripping with sarcasm. Ethan's silence was the only answer I needed. The truth hung in the air, a tangible presence that neither of us could deny. That night I lay awake, the weight of Ethan's betrayal crushing me. I had been a faithful wife, a caring stepdaughter, and yet this was the payment for my loyalty. As dawn broke, a cold resolve settled over me. Ethan had made his choice, and now I would make mine. It was time for Ethan to learn that every action has consequences. I would no longer be the silent victim of his deceit. The plan started to form in my mind, a plan that would shake the very foundation of Ethan's world. He had underestimated me for the last time. Evelyn, the doting wife and caregiver, was about to show Ethan a side of her he had never seen, a side that even I hadn't known existed. The stage was set for my revenge, and I was ready to play my part to perfection. Ethan's days of betrayal were numbered, and he wouldn't even see it coming. Armed with the bitter truth, I was a storm brewing on the horizon. Ethan's betrayal had lit a fire within me, and I was determined to make him pay. My plan for revenge began to take shape, fueled by each lie he had told, each night he had left me alone. Julia visited again, and this time I didn't hold back. "Ethan's having an affair," I confessed, the words tasting like poison on my lips. Julia's shock quickly turned to anger. "That bastard! How could he do this to you, to Dad?" "We need to do something, Julia. I won't let him get away with this," I said, my voice steady with newfound resolve. "We'll figure this out, Evelyn. I'm with you," Julia assured, her hand gripping mine. The opportunity presented itself when Ethan casually mentioned an upcoming business trip. "A week in New York." "Big project," he said, avoiding my gaze. "A week, huh?" I mused, a plan forming in my mind. "Have a good trip." But it wouldn't be the business trip Ethan was expecting. No, this would be the week when his world would come crashing down. I started my preparations the moment he left. With Julia's help, I gathered evidence of his affair, hotel receipts, phone records, late-night messages. Each piece was a nail in the coffin of our marriage. Next, I contacted a lawyer to discuss divorce and property rights. I would not only leave Ethan, but I would also strip him of everything he held dear. His betrayal had cost him more than just our marriage. It would cost him his home, his comfort, his security. "Evelyn, are you sure about this?" Julia asked, concern etched on her face. "I've never been more sure of anything," I replied, a cold determination in my voice. While Ethan was living it up in New York, oblivious to the storm brewing back home, I was executing my plan with precision. The house, Ethan's childhood home, was the first to go. I hired a demolition crew, explaining that the house was old and needed to be torn down for safety reasons. As the bulldozers tore through the walls, I watched with a sense of grim satisfaction. This was more than just a physical demolition. It was symbolic of the destruction of our marriage. Next, I arranged for the sale of the land. The property was in my name, thanks to Ethan's careless handling of the paperwork. The land would fetch a good price, and the money would be mine alone. As the days passed, my plan unfolded flawlessly. I was no longer the betrayed wife. I was the architect of Ethan's downfall. Finally, the day of Ethan's return arrived. I waited for his call, the anticipation a sweet torture. "Evelyn, where are you? What happened to the house?" Ethan's voice was laced with confusion and panic. "I had it demolished, Ethan. And the land, it's been sold," I replied, each word a dagger to his heart. "What? Why? Evelyn, that was our home," he stammered, his voice a mix of disbelief and despair. "It was a house, Ethan, not a home. And now it's gone, just like our marriage," I said, my voice calm and steady. "But why? How could you do this?" Ethan's plea was pathetic, a far cry from the confident man he once was. "You made your choice, Ethan. Now I've made mine. Goodbye." With that, I hung up, cutting off any further pleas or excuses. As I sat in the silent room, a sense of liberation washed over me. I had done it. I had taken back control of my life. Ethan's betrayal had shattered our marriage, but it had also awakened a strength in me that I never knew I had. I was no longer a victim. I was a survivor. And as I looked ahead to my new life, free from lies and deceit, I knew one thing for sure. Ethan would never forget the name Evelyn. Ethan's world had crumbled, and I was the architect of its downfall. The day he returned, I waited, knowing he would confront me. As expected, his car screeched to a halt where our home once stood, now just an empty lot. "What have you done, Evelyn?" Ethan bellowed as he approached, his face a mask of shock and anger. "I've freed myself from a life of lies and deceit," I replied calmly, my resolve unshaken. "This was my childhood home. How could you?" His voice cracked under the weight of his loss. "Your childhood home? You mean the house where you neglected your father and betrayed your wife?" My words were sharp, cutting through the air between us. Ethan staggered as if my words were physical blows. "Evelyn, please, let's talk about this." "Talk? Like you talk to your mistress?" I countered, the bitterness in my voice unmistakable. "You don't understand. It was a mistake," Ethan pleaded, his eyes searching for any sign of the love that once bound us. "A mistake repeated is a choice, Ethan, and you chose her over us, over everything we built together," I said, the finality in my voice echoing in the empty space. Ethan looked around, desperation taking hold. "But where will I go? What about my things?" "Your things are in storage. As for where you'll go, that's no longer my concern," I stated, devoid of any sympathy. "I never thought you could be this cruel." Ethan said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Cruel? No, Ethan, I'm not cruel. I'm just no longer your fool," I replied, turning away from the ruins of our past. Ethan's voice faded as I walked away, leaving him amidst the debris of his choices. I had exacted my revenge, not out of cruelty, but out of respect for myself. As I drove away, the weight of the past years seemed to lift off my shoulders. I was no longer bound by Ethan's betrayal or the confines of a loveless marriage. In destroying our physical home, I had built myself a new one, a sanctuary of self-respect and dignity. Ethan had taken so much from me, but he couldn't take away my strength or my ability to start anew. I had closed the chapter on Ethan and our life together. Now it was time to write a new story, one where I was the protagonist, not a victim of someone else's script. Ethan's downfall was the price he paid for his betrayal. As for me, I had gained something far more valuable, my freedom and a chance to rediscover who I was before I lost myself in our marriage. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in years, it was a road I looked forward to traveling. Ethan was a part of my past, a chapter closed and left behind. The future was mine to shape, and I embraced it with open arms and a heart free of the chains of betrayal. The aftermath of the house's demolition left Ethan in a state of shock and desperation. A few days later he called, his voice laced with a mix of anger and disbelief. "Evelyn, we need to talk. Meet me at the cafe on 5th, please." I agreed, curious to see how he would try to spin this tale. At the cafe, Ethan sat hunched over, a shadow of his former self. "Evelyn, why are you doing this? You've destroyed everything," he blurted out as I sat down. "Destroyed everything." "Ethan, you did that when you chose to have an affair," I replied, my tone even but firm. "That was a mistake. But this, what you're doing, it's unforgivable." His voice cracked, his facade of control crumbling. "A mistake? No, Ethan. A mistake is forgetting to pay a bill, not cheating on your wife." I countered sharply. "You can't just take everything from me. The house? The money? What about me?" Ethan's plea was pathetic, tinged with selfishness. "What about you? What about me, Ethan? Or did you forget that there were two people in this marriage?" I challenged. Ethan's face contorted with frustration. "You're being unreasonable. You're ruining my life over a fling." "A fling? Is that what you call breaking our vows, our trust?" My voice rose, attracting glances from nearby tables. "Evelyn, please, we can fix this. I'll end it with her. We can go to counseling," Ethan offered, desperation seeping into his voice. "Fix this? There's nothing left to fix, Ethan. You made your choice, and now you have to live with it," I said, my decision clear and unwavering. "I'll lose my job, my reputation." "You don't understand the consequences," he pleaded. "The consequences? You should have thought of that before." "Anish, as for your job and reputation, those were never my concern," I replied, my tone icy. Ethan slumped, defeated. "So, what now? A divorce?" "Yes, a divorce. And since you're so concerned about consequences, I've recorded this conversation. Admitting to your affair will make the proceedings much smoother," I revealed, watching as the color drained from his face. "You recorded me?" Ethan gasped, his eyes wide with shock. "Yes. It's time for you to face the consequences of your actions, Ethan. You've lost more than just a house. You've lost a wife who loved you, a family that respected you, and a life that you took for granted," I stated, standing up to leave. As I walked away, I didn't look back. Ethan's voice, calling out to me, was just a distant echo. I had closed that chapter of my life, and there was no turning back. The price of betrayal was high, and Ethan was paying it in full. I had not just sought revenge, I had sought justice for myself. The future was uncertain, but it was a future where I was no longer shackled by Ethan's deceit. I was free, and that freedom was the sweetest victory of all. The dust had settled, and Ethan's world was irrevocably altered. The divorce proceedings were swift, fueled by the incontrovertible evidence of his affair. He tried to argue, to fight, but the truth left him with no ground to stand on. As I sat across from him in the lawyer's office for the final signing, he was a mere shell of the man I once knew. "Evelyn, please, can't we rethink this?" Ethan's voice was a desperate whisper. "There's nothing left to rethink, Ethan. You made your choices, and now I've made mine," I replied, my voice steady and resolute. With each signature, I felt a chapter of my life closing, a chapter filled with pain, betrayal, and ultimately liberation. When it was over, Ethan tried to speak, but I cut him off. "There's nothing more to say, Ethan. Goodbye." Leaving the office, I felt lighter, as if a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. I was no longer Ethan's wife. I was Evelyn, free and unbound. In the weeks that followed, Ethan's life continued to unravel. His job was lost, a casualty of the scandal. His reputation, once impeccable, was now tarnished by the truth of his indiscretions. I heard through mutual acquaintances that he was living in a small apartment, a stark contrast to the life of comfort he once knew. His mistress had left him, unwilling to deal with the fallout of their affair. Ethan was alone, a consequence of his own making. As for me, I started anew. The money from the sale of the land allowed me financial freedom, and I found peace in my independence. I reconnected with old friends, took up hobbies I had long forgotten, and found joy in the small things. Julia and I remained close, our bond strengthened by the trials we faced together. "You're stronger than you ever realized, Evelyn," she said to me one evening over dinner. "I guess I am," I replied, a smile playing on my lips. My new life was simpler but richer in ways that money couldn't buy. I had respect, dignity, and a sense of self that no one could take from me. Ethan tried to reach out a few times, but I never responded. That chapter of my life was closed, and I had no intention of revisiting it. I often thought about the house, the symbol of our broken marriage. In its destruction, I had found my strength. It was a drastic step, but it was necessary for me to break free. Now, looking ahead, I saw a path filled with possibilities. A path where I was the author of my own story, no longer a character in someone else's drama. The road to recovery was not easy, but it was mine to travel. I had survived the storm, and in its wake I found a peace I never knew existed. Ethan's betrayal had shattered me, but in those broken pieces I found myself, and that was the greatest victory of all. The spatula clattered to the floor, splattering pancake batter across my freshly mopped kitchen tiles. I stared at the mess, fighting back tears of frustration. This was supposed to be easy. How hard could it be to make a simple breakfast? "Everything okay in there, hon?" Ben called from the dining room. I plastered on a smile he couldn't see. "Just peachy. Be ready in a jiffy." Grabbing paper towels, I frantically wiped up the spill. My phone pinged with a notification, another comment on my latest blog post about effortless entertaining. If they only knew. I tossed the soiled towels and retrieved a clean spatula, determined to salvage this disaster. The griddle sizzled as I poured fresh batter, praying for edible results. Ben appeared in the doorway, looking annoyingly handsome in his tweed jacket. "Ellie, we're running late. I have that faculty meeting, remember?" I know. Just give me 5 more minutes." I flipped a slightly burnt pancake onto a plate, wincing at its sad appearance. He frowned, eyeing the mess. "Maybe we should just grab something on the way? Did you forget to set an alarm again?" I bit back a retort. "No, I've been up since 6. These things just take time." 6? He raised an eyebrow. "What have you been doing all morning?" The accusation in his tone made my cheeks burn. I gestured at the immaculate living room, visible through the archway. "Cleaning, obviously. You know how I like to keep things tidy." Ben's eyes narrowed. "Ellie, be honest. Did you hire a maid?" I gaped at him, pancake forgotten. "What? No, why would you think that?" He sighed, running a hand through his salt and pepper hair. "It's just, everything's always so perfect. The house, your outfits, those elaborate blog posts. I know how much you struggled with housework when we first got married. It doesn't add up." My throat tightened. "So you think I'm lying? That I can't possibly manage our home without help?" "I didn't say that," Ben backpedaled. "I just worry you're stretching yourself too thin, trying to maintain this image." I slammed the spatula down. "It's not an image, Ben. This is who I am now. I've worked hard to improve." He held up his hands. Okay, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have accused you." But the damage was done. I turned away, blinking back tears. "Your pancakes are ready. I need to get dressed." I fled upstairs, leaving Ben calling after me. In our bedroom, I collapsed onto the bed, my carefully constructed world crumbling around me. My phone buzzed again. Another glowing comment, praising my seemingly effortless life. If they only knew the truth, how I spent hours scrubbing and re-scrubbing, how I practiced recipes late into the night, how I agonized over every word and photo on my blog. I'd worked so hard to become the perfect wife, the envy of our social circle. And now Ben thought it was all fake? Anger bubbled up, replacing the hurt. I'd show him. I'd prove I could do it all, be the ideal homemaker and a successful career woman. Squaring my shoulders, I marched to the closet and selected a crisp white blouse and pencil skirt. I touched up my makeup, erasing any trace of distress. Downstairs, Ben was finishing his pancakes. He looked up guiltily as I entered. "Ellie, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have." I cut him off with a bright smile. "Water under the bridge, darling. Now, don't you have a meeting to get to?" He blinked, thrown by my sudden change in demeanor. Right. Yes." I handed him his briefcase and kissed his cheek. "Have a wonderful day, sweetheart. I'll see you tonight." As the door closed behind him, my smile faded. I pulled out my phone, fingers flying over the keys as I composed a new blog post. 5 simple steps to a spotless home, I typed. Number 1, start with a positive attitude. I paused, a devious glint in my eye. Oh, I'd show Ben just how capable I could be, and I'd do it with a smile. I stood in the kitchen, scrubbing furiously at an already spotless counter. The events of the morning replayed in my mind, Ben's accusation echoing like a broken record. How dare he question my abilities, my dedication? The front door opened, and I tensed. Ben's footsteps approached, hesitant. "Ellie," he called, "can we talk?" I turned, forcing a smile. "Of course, darling. How was your meeting?" He frowned, clearly thrown by my cheerful demeanor. "It was fine. Look about this morning." "Water under the bridge," I chirped, turning back to my task. "No, it's not." Ben's hand on my arm stopped me. "We need to discuss this." I faced him, my smile slipping. "Discuss what exactly? How you don't trust me? How you think I'm incapable of managing our home?" He sighed. "That's not what I meant. I'm just concerned. You're always so perfect. It's not natural." My jaw clenched. "So now I'm too good at being a wife? Make up your mind, Ben." "That's not." He ran a hand through his hair. "I miss the old Ellie, the one who burned dinner and left laundry in piles, the one who didn't obsess over every little detail." I recoiled as if slapped. "The old Ellie wasn't good enough for you. Remember? You were always complaining about the mess, about eating takeout every night." "I never meant for you to change completely." Ben's voice rose. "I just wanted you to try a little harder. But this perfect housewife act, it's not you, Ellie." "Act?" I spat the word. "You think this is an act? I've worked my ass off to become this person, to be the wife you wanted." Ben's eyes widened. "I never asked for this. I want my wife back, not some Stepford robot." The room spun. I gripped the counter, knuckles white. "So what do you want from me, Ben? To be a slob? To fail at everything?" He reached for me, but I flinched away. "I want you to be yourself. To relax. To let me help around the house instead of doing everything yourself." I laughed bitterly. "Oh, that's rich. Now you want to help? After years of criticizing my efforts?" "I never." "Save it." I held up a hand. "I don't need your help. I'm managing just fine on my own." Ben's expression hardened. "Are you? Really? Because I'm starting to wonder if you've hired someone to help. A maid, maybe? Or a ghostwriter for your blog?" The accusation hung in the air, sharp as a knife. I stared at him, speechless. "That's what I thought," Ben said quietly. "Ellie, this has to stop. You're running yourself ragged trying to maintain this facade." "It's not a facade," I shouted, surprising us both. "This is who I am now. Why can't you accept that?" Ben's shoulders slumped. "Because I don't recognize you anymore, and I'm worried about what this obsession is doing to you. To us." I turned away, blinking back tears. "Maybe you never knew me at all." The silence stretched between us, a chasm widening with each passing second. Finally, Ben spoke. "I have an idea. Why don't you spend some time with my mother? Learn from her. She's always been great at balancing everything." I whirled around, incredulous. "You want me to shadow your mother? Like some kind of trainee housewife?" "That's not what I meant." "No, I think that's exactly what you meant." My voice was ice. "You don't think I can do this on my own. You think I need Mommy to show me how to be a proper wife." Ben's face flushed. "That's not fair. I'm trying to help." "Well, don't." I grabbed my purse from the counter. "I don't need your help, and I certainly don't need your mother's." "Ellie, wait." But I was already out the door, slamming it behind me. As I stormed down the driveway, my phone buzzed. Another notification from my blog. "You're such an inspiration," the comment read. "How do you do it all?" I laughed, the sound bordering on hysterical. If they only knew. If Ben only knew. One thing was certain. I'd show them all just how capable I could be, no matter what it took. The doorbell chimed, shattering my concentration. I glanced at the clock, frowning. Ben wasn't due home for hours, and I wasn't expecting anyone. Wiping flour-covered hands on my apron, I hurried to answer. My heart sank as I opened the door. Hannah, Ben's mother, stood on the porch, a bright smile on her face. "Surprise, dear," she chirped, sweeping past me into the foyer. "I thought I'd pop by for a visit." I plastered on a smile, panic rising in my chest. "Hannah, what a lovely surprise. I'm afraid you've caught me in the middle of baking." She waved a dismissive hand. "Oh, don't worry about me. I'll just have a look around while you finish up." Before I could protest, Hannah was off, inspecting every nook and cranny of our home. I trailed behind, frantically searching for any imperfection she might criticize. To my shock, Hannah's comments were nothing but praise. "Oh, Ellie, the living room is immaculate, and look at how you've organized the bookshelves. Simply charming." I blinked, unsure how to respond. "Thank you, and the kitchen!" Hannah exclaimed as we entered. "My goodness, it's spotless. You must work so hard to keep everything in such perfect order. A lump formed in my throat. This was the validation I'd been craving, but it felt hollow coming from Hannah. Did she truly mean it, or was this some kind of test? It's nothing, really, I mumbled, averting my eyes. Hannah's hand on my arm startled me. Ellie, dear, are you all right? You seem tense. I opened my mouth to brush off her concern, but to my horror, tears welled up instead. I'm fine. It's just been a stressful few days. Hannah's expression softened. Oh, sweetheart. Come, sit down. Tell me what's troubling you. Before I knew it, I was pouring out the whole sordid tale. The fight with Ben, his accusations, the suggestion that I shadow Hannah. To my surprise, my mother-in-law listened without judgment, her face growing increasingly concerned. When I finished, Hannah shook her head. Oh, Ellie, I'm so sorry you've been going through this alone, and I'm furious with my son for treating you this way. I gaped at her. You are? Of course, Hannah's eyes flashed. The nerve of him questioning your abilities after all you've accomplished and suggesting you shadow me, as if you need lessons in homemaking. Honestly. A weight lifted from my shoulders. I was worried you'd agree with him. Hannah squeezed my hand. Never. Ellie, you've created a beautiful home here. More importantly, you've built a successful career with your blog. Ben should be celebrating your achievements, not tearing you down. Tears threatened again, but this time from relief. Thank you, Hannah. You have no idea how much that means to me. We sat in companionable silence for a moment before Hannah spoke again, her tone hesitant. Ellie, dear, may I ask you something? I nodded, suddenly wary. Are you happy? Truly happy, I mean. Not just putting on a brave face for the world? The question caught me off guard. I opened my mouth to give my usual cheery response, but the words stuck in my throat. Hannah's eyes were kind but knowing. It's okay if you're not, you know. No one can be perfect all the time, not even the fabulous lifestyle blogger Ellie Matthews. Something inside me cracked. The facade I'd worked so hard to maintain began to crumble. I'm exhausted, I whispered, the admission feeling like both a betrayal and a relief. I'm constantly terrified of slipping up, of not being good enough. For Ben, for my followers, for myself. Hannah nodded, understanding in her eyes. Oh, my dear, you don't have to carry this burden alone. Have you talked to Ben about how you're feeling? I shook my head, shame coloring my cheeks. I can't. He already thinks I'm faking it all. If he knew how much I'm struggling, then he'd have the chance to support you, Hannah finished gently. Ellie, marriage is a partnership. You don't have to be perfect all the time. As her words sank in, the front door opened. Ben's voice called out, Ellie, are you home? I saw Mom's car outside. Hannah and I exchanged a look. The moment of truth had arrived. I smoothed my dress for the 100th time, forcing a smile as Ben and I walked into the faculty dinner. After our recent fights, I was determined to prove I could be the perfect wife he seemed to want. The room buzzed with conversation, academics in tweed jackets mingling over glasses of wine. There's Jack, Ben said, steering me towards a portly man with a salt and pepper beard. I want you to meet his wife, Sarah. She's amazing, runs their household like clockwork while volunteering at the hospital. My stomach clenched. Another impossible standard to measure up to. Jack beamed as we approached. Ben, and this must be the famous Ellie. We've heard so much about you. I shook his hand, my blogger persona slipping into all good things, I hope. A harried-looking woman appeared at Jack's side, dark circles prominent under her eyes. Sorry I'm late, she muttered. The sitter canceled last minute. Ellie, this is my wife, Sarah, Jack said proudly. Superwoman herself. Sarah's tired eyes met mine, and I saw a flicker of recognition. Not of me, but of the exhaustion we both felt. As the men fell into shop talk, Sarah leaned closer. So you're the lifestyle guru. How do you do it? I can barely keep my head above water most days. I opened my mouth to give my usual perky response, but something in her desperate expression stopped me. Honestly, it's not easy. Some days I feel like I'm drowning too. Sarah's eyes widened. Really? But your blog, everything looks so perfect. I glanced at Ben, engrossed in conversation. It's mostly smoke and mirrors, I admitted quietly. I'm constantly stressed, trying to maintain this image. God, I thought it was just me. Sarah breathed. Jack's always going on about how I should be more like you, effortlessly juggling everything. Anger flared in my chest. There's nothing effortless about it, and it's not fair for them to expect that from us. Sarah nodded vigorously. I know. But try telling them that. Jack thinks I'm just being lazy when I can't keep up. Ladies. Ben's voice interrupted our conspiratorial whispers. What are you two gossiping about? I plastered on a smile. Oh, just swapping recipes. Sarah was telling me about her famous pot roast. Ben chuckled. Better not give away all your secrets, Sarah. Ellie might actually learn to cook. The casual jab stung more than it should have. I saw Sarah flinch in sympathy. Actually, I said, my voice steely, I was telling Sarah about my blog. She's interested in starting one of her own. Ben's eyebrows shot up. Really? Well, that's ambitious. Are you sure you have time for that, Sarah, with the kids and everything? I watched the light dim in Sarah's eyes. Oh, I don't know. It was just an idea. Nonsense, I said firmly. You absolutely could do it. I'd be happy to help you get started. Ben frowned. Ellie, don't go putting ideas in her head. Sarah's got enough on her plate already. Something snapped inside me. And what exactly is that supposed to mean, Ben? That women like us can't have aspirations beyond keeping house? The conversation around us quieted. Ben's face flushed. That's not what I meant. I just think. I know exactly what you think, I hissed. That we should be satisfied with being perfect little housewives, right? Never mind our own dreams or ambitions. Ellie, please, Ben muttered, glancing around nervously. You're making a scene. I laughed bitterly. Heaven forbid I embarrass you in front of your colleagues. Well, don't worry, I won't stay to tarnish your reputation. Grabbing my purse, I turned to Sarah. Call me if you want to talk about that blog, or anything else. As I stormed out, I heard Ben making excuses behind me. Sorry, she's not feeling well. You know how women can be. Tears blurred my vision as I fumbled for my car keys. I'd tried so hard to be what Ben wanted, and for what? To be belittled and dismissed? Sitting in the parking lot, engine idling, I made a decision. No more perfect housewife act. No more bending over backwards to meet impossible standards. It was time to show Ben, to show everyone, exactly what Ellie Matthews was capable of. And God help anyone who tried to stand in my way. I stormed into Ben's office, a whirlwind of righteous anger. After the faculty dinner fiasco, I was done playing the perfect wife. It was time for a confrontation. The hallway was eerily quiet, most professors gone for the day. I reached for the doorknob, then froze. Muffled voices drifted through the wood. Ben wasn't alone. We can't keep doing this, Amy. Ben's voice, low and intimate. My heart stopped. Amy? His young research assistant? I know, a female voice replied, trembling, but I can't help how I feel about you. The world tilted on its axis. I stumbled back, my hand flying to my mouth to stifle a gasp. It's complicated, Ben sighed. Ellie? Hearing my name on his lips, spoken with such resignation, shattered something inside me. Before I could think, I shoved the door open. The scene before me burned into my retinas. Ben, shirt half unbuttoned, arms around a petite blonde. They sprang apart, guilt etched on their faces. Ellie, Ben's voice cracked. This isn't, I can explain. I held up a hand, silencing him, my gaze locked on Amy, who looked ready to bolt. How long? She flinched, unable to meet my eyes. 3 months, she whispered, 3 months. While I'd been killing myself to be the perfect wife, he'd been... A hysterical laugh bubbled up. Ellie, please, Ben pleaded. It was a mistake. It didn't mean anything. Didn't mean anything, I echoed, my voice dangerously calm. You've been sleeping with your student for 3 months, and it didn't mean anything. Amy's eyes widened. Student? But you told me you were separated. I turned to her, a spark of pity breaking through my rage. Oh, honey, he lied to you too. Ben's face drained of color. Amy, I can explain. Save it, she spat, grabbing her bag. I'm done being your dirty little secret. As Amy fled, I faced my husband, the man I'd loved since high school, the man I'd bent over backwards trying to please. Well, I said, crossing my arms, I'm waiting for that explanation. Ben ran a hand through his hair, desperation in his eyes. It was a moment of weakness. I've been under so much stress lately, and Amy was there, and... God, Ellie, I'm so sorry. Stress? I laughed bitterly. You want to talk about stress? Try maintaining a perfect home, a successful blog, and a marriage to a man who constantly belittles your efforts. That's stress? Ben. He reached for me, but I stepped back. I know I've been hard on you lately. I missed the old Ellie, the one who wasn't so obsessed with perfection. White-hot anger surged through me. The old Ellie wasn't good enough for you, remember? You wanted a perfect wife, so that's what I became. and it still wasn't enough. That's not true, Ben protested weakly. Isn't it? You criticized my housekeeping, my cooking, even my blog. Nothing I did was ever good enough, so you went looking for someone better. Tears streamed down my face, but I didn't bother wiping them away. Let him see the mess he'd made of me. Ellie, please, Ben begged. We can work through this. I'll do anything. Counseling, whatever you want. I stared at him, this stranger wearing my husband's face. All the love, all the history between us, tainted by his betrayal. In that moment, I made a decision. No more bending over backwards, no more sacrificing my happiness for his. You're right, Ben, I said quietly. We can't keep doing this. Hope flickered in his eyes. So you'll give me another chance? I shook my head, a weight lifting from my shoulders. No, I'm giving myself another chance, without you. As I walked out of his office, out of our marriage, I felt something I hadn't in years. Freedom. The path ahead was uncertain, terrifying even, but for the first time in a long time it was mine to choose. Let Ben deal with the fallout of his actions. I had a life to reclaim. My hands shook as I fumbled with the key to our Ben's house. The confrontation in his office replayed in my mind, fueling a fire of rage and determination. I had one goal now. Gather my things and leave before he could sweet-talk his way out of this mess. As I burst through the door, a familiar voice stopped me cold. Ellie, what's going on? Amy stood in our living room, looking lost and tearful. I froze, my mind reeling. What are you doing here? She wrung her hands. I came to apologize, to explain. I had no idea you and Ben were still together. He told me you were separated, that you were just keeping up appearances for his career. A bitter laugh escaped me. Of course he did. And you believed him? Amy's face crumpled. I'm so sorry, Ellie. I never meant to hurt anyone. I thought we were in love. The last word hit me like a physical blow. Love. Had Ben ever truly loved me, or had I just been a convenient prop in his perfect professor life? Before I could respond, the front door flew open. Ben rushed in, his eyes wild. Ellie, please, we need to talk. He stopped short, seeing Amy. What are you doing here? Apparently cleaning up your mess, I snapped. Did you really think you could keep juggling us both? Ben's face paled. It's not like that. I never meant for any of this to happen. But it did happen, Ben, I shouted, years of pent-up frustration bursting free. You lied to both of us. You made me feel inadequate, pushed me to be this perfect wife, all while carrying on with your student. Amy flinched at the word student. Is that true? Am I going to lose my scholarship over this? Ben turned to her, panic in his eyes. No, of course not. We can keep this quiet. No one has to know. Are you kidding me? I interrupted. You're still trying to cover this up? What about taking responsibility for once in your life? You don't understand, Ben pleaded. If this gets out, I could lose my job, my reputation. Your reputation? Amy's voice rose, hysteria edging in. What about my future? My career? God, I'm such an idiot. As they argued, a calm settled over me. I'd spent so long trying to be what Ben wanted, I'd lost sight of myself. But now, watching him scramble to salvage his carefully constructed image, I saw him clearly for the first time. Enough, I said quietly. They both turned to me, startled by my tone. This ends now. Ben stepped towards me, desperation in his eyes. Ellie, please, we can work this out. I'll do anything. Just don't... Don't what, Ben? Don't tell the truth. Don't shatter your precious reputation. I shook my head. I'm done protecting you. I'm done being your perfect little wife. I turned to Amy, who looked ready to bolt. You should go to the dean, report what happened, protect yourself and your future. Ellie, no, Ben shouted. You can't do this to me. Something snapped inside me. I can't do this to you. What about what you've done to us? To our marriage, to Amy's trust? I grabbed my phone, fingers flying over the keys. You want to talk about reputations? Let's see what your colleagues think when they read my next blog post. Living my truth, how I discovered my husband's affair and found myself. Ben lunged for the phone, but I danced away. Don't you dare, he growled. Or what? I challenged. You'll belittle me some more? Make me feel small and inadequate? Those days are over, Ben. As I hit publish, a weight lifted from my shoulders. Ben's face contorted with rage and fear, but I felt only relief. It's done, I said quietly. The truth is out there now. Deal with the consequences. I turned to leave, but Ben grabbed my arm. You've ruined everything, he hissed. As I stared into the eyes of the man I once loved, now a stranger, I realized this was far from over. The real battle was just beginning. I stood on Hannah and George's doorstep, my heart pounding. The weight of what I was about to do threatened to crush me, but I steeled myself. There was no going back now. Hannah opened the door, her smile fading as she took in my tear-stained face. "Ellie? What's wrong, dear?" I couldn't hold it in any longer. The whole sordid tale came pouring out, Ben's affair, the confrontation, my blog post exposing it all. By the time I finished, we were sitting in their living room, Hannah's arm around me while George paced, his face thunderous. "I'll kill him," George muttered. "My own son? How could he do this?" Hannah squeezed my hand. "What do you need from us, Ellie?" I took a deep breath. "I want a divorce. And I need your support. Ben's going to fight this, I know it." The words hung in the air, heavy with finality. Hannah and George exchanged a look, years of unspoken communication passing between them. "Of course we support you," Hannah said firmly. "What Ben did is unforgivable." Relief washed over me, followed quickly by guilt. "I'm so sorry. I never wanted to come between you and your son." George stopped pacing, his expression softening. "You didn't, Ellie. Ben did that all on his own." Just then, my phone buzzed. A notification from my blog, comments pouring in on my latest post. I hesitated, then opened it. "Oh my God," I whispered. "What is it?" Hannah leaned in, concerned. I showed her the screen, my hands shaking. "My post. It's gone viral. Thousands of shares, hundreds of comments, women sharing their own stories of infidelity and empowerment." As I scrolled, another notification popped up. An email from a major publishing house expressing interest in turning my story into a book. "I don't understand," I said, overwhelmed. "How did this happen so fast?" George chuckled. "You underestimate your influence, Ellie. Your blog has quite the following." The realization hit me like a tidal wave. All those years of curating the perfect image, and it was my moment of raw honesty that resonated the most. Before I could process it, my phone rang. Ben's name flashed on the screen. "Don't answer it," Hannah advised, but I shook my head. "I have to face him sometime." I took a deep breath and answered. "Hello. How dare you?" Ben's voice was low, dangerous. "Do you have any idea what you've done? The dean's called an emergency meeting. My career is on the line." Anger flared in my chest. "Your career? What about my life, Ben? The years I wasted trying to be perfect for you." "Perfect?" he scoffed. "You were suffocating me with your obsession, and now you've ruined everything. I hope you're happy." The line went dead. I stared at the phone, numb. "Ellie?" Hannah's voice seemed far away. "What did he say?" I looked up, meeting their concerned gazes. "He blames me for everything." George's face darkened. That boy never could take responsibility for his actions. "But he's right," I whispered. "I did ruin everything. Our marriage, his career." Hannah took my hands firmly. "No, Ben ruined those things when he chose to betray you. You simply told the truth." As her words sank in, another email notification pinged. This time, from our joint bank account. My blood ran cold as I read the message. "He's emptied our accounts, transferred everything to a private account in his name." The room spun. Years of savings gone in an instant. My entire life dismantled in a matter of hours. "That's it," George said, reaching for his phone. "I'm calling our lawyer." I stared at the email, Ben's final act of betrayal burning into my retinas. In that moment, I realized the true battle was just beginning. Ben wouldn't go down without a fight, and neither would I. "No," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "I'll call my own lawyer. It's time I stood on my own 2 feet." As I dialed the number, a strange calm settled over me. The life I'd known was over, but a new one was just beginning. And this time, I'd be the one in control. I stood in the courtroom, my heart pounding as the judge prepared to deliver her verdict. Months of bitter legal battles had led to this moment. Ben sat across the aisle, his once handsome face haggard and resentful. "In the matter of Matthews versus Matthews," the judge began, her voice echoing in the tense silence, "this court finds in favor of the plaintiff, Ellie Matthews." A collective gasp rippled through the room. I closed my eyes, relief washing over me like a tidal wave. "Furthermore," the judge continued, "given the evidence of financial misconduct, Mr. Matthews is ordered to repay all funds illegally transferred from joint accounts, plus interest." I opened my eyes to see Ben's face contort with rage. He leapt to his feet, shouting, "This is outrageous! She ruined my career, and now you're taking everything?" "Mr. Matthews, control yourself or I'll hold you in contempt," the judge warned. As Ben sank back into his seat, defeated, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. It was over. I was free. Outside the courthouse, Hannah and George enveloped me in a warm embrace. "We're so proud of you, Ellie," Hannah whispered, tears in her eyes. "Thank you," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "I couldn't have done this without your support." As we turned to leave, a familiar voice called out. "Ellie, wait!" Ben approached, his expression a mix of anger and desperation. "Can we talk? Please?" I hesitated, then nodded to Hannah and George. "I'll be fine," I assured them. Once alone, Ben's facade crumbled. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice breaking. "I know I messed up, but isn't there any way we can fix this? Start over?" For a moment, I saw a glimmer of the man I'd fallen in love with all those years ago. But then I remembered the lies, the betrayal, the years of feeling inadequate. "No, Ben," I said softly. "We can't go back. Too much has changed." "Because of your blog?" he scoffed. "Your newfound fame?" I shook my head. "Because I've changed. I'm not the woman who bent over backwards trying to please you anymore. I like who I've become." Ben's face hardened. "So that's it? You're just going to throw away 15 years of marriage?" "You threw it away," I corrected him gently. "I'm just picking up the pieces and building something new." As I turned to walk away, Ben called out, "You'll regret this, Ellie. You need me." I paused, looking back at him one last time. "No, Ben, I don't. And that's the most liberating thing I've ever realized." Weeks later, I sat in my new apartment, surrounded by boxes yet to be unpacked. My laptop glowed with the final draft of my book, part memoir, part self-help guide for women reclaiming their lives. A notification pinged, another message from my blog's community. Women sharing their own stories of empowerment, thanking me for giving them courage. Tears pricked my eyes as I read their words. All those years of curating a perfect image, and it was my raw, honest truth that resonated the most. My phone buzzed. A text from Sarah, Jack's wife. "Coffee tomorrow? I have big news." I smiled, remembering our conversation at the faculty dinner. She'd started her own blog, inspired by my journey. Now she was talking about going back to school, pursuing her long-forgotten dreams. As I typed a reply, I caught sight of my reflection in the window. Gone was the perfectly coiffed, perpetually stressed woman I'd been for so long. In her place was someone softer, stronger, someone real. The doorbell rang, startling me from my reverie. I opened it to find Hannah, arms laden with groceries. "I thought you might need some help settling in," she said with a warm smile. "You didn't have to do that," I protested, but she waved me off. "Nonsense. You're family, Ellie. That hasn't changed." As we unpacked the groceries, chatting and laughing, I felt a profound sense of peace settle over me. My life hadn't turned out the way I'd planned, but maybe that was okay. I'd lost a husband, but gained a true family. Lost a facade, but found my authentic self. And in sharing my story, I'd connected with countless women on similar journeys. For the first time in years, I wasn't worried about being perfect. I was simply happy being me. As Hannah and I clinked coffee mugs in a toast to new beginnings, I knew with absolute certainty the best was yet to come.